This is the United Nations, which I'd covered as an investigative journalist for 10 years before abruptly being thrown out in 2016 for asking questions.
Standard Chartered Bank has this contract with the UN, and he's on their board. So is he still on their board, or is he somehow half on their board? How does it work?
I've described you what the series of procedures are, and those are what applies to him as well as to other special advisors.
So how is
we're not going to interfere with their own outside of UN lives by going into all of their details at great length, but the ethics office has been dealing with this, and they have a series of guidelines, and he's aware of them.
How can
and
you be on the board of a corporation?
You keep interrupting me.
All right, I'm asking because I see you already looking away, and I want to. This is a very simple question.
I'm looking at someone else who's raising a hand,
Sure.
but please behave yourself. You need to understand that when someone is asking a question, you allow them to answer. I've actually lost my train of thought, so I'll have to
I'm just asking. I'm willing to because I have a follow-up question.
Because the continued interruptions, you're doing it again, actually break people's train of thought. He has been in touch with the ethics office. And like I said, they have a series of remedies for the steps which I've detailed. Beyond that, this is what we have.
Ban Ki-moon goes way back with Seung-soo. Now, as Ban Ki-moon leaves the UN, he wants to run for president of South Korea. Who better to work with than Mr. Han, previously a prime minister of South Korea? Ban gave Han a UN position, while letting Han remain on corporate boards where he made money from his UN position. It will all come full circle.
So I wanted to ask you about the John Ash case, or whatever was being called the John Ash case. What do you conclude from what's come out so far in terms of how it kind of penetrated the UN, and what type of reforms do you think are needed? Thank you.
About this former PGA John Ash's case, I was really shocked, and I have established a small task force led by my chief of staff, Susanna Malcora.
Ban Ki-moon said he was shocked, but here he is accepting an award from Francis Lorenzo, who pleaded guilty to UN bribery, and from John Ash's boss, Baldwin Spencer of Antigua and Barbuda. Here's Ban Ki-moon shaking a notable hand. Over his right shoulder is Frank Lorenzo, and over his left is Vivian Wang, who pled guilty to UN bribery.
Mr. Lee.
Sure. Questions on Myanmar and Burundi, but I want to ask inevitably about this, the revelations about Mr. Ash and Frank Lorenzo and others. And just as the lead spokesman, as a person that travels around with the Secretary General, what would you say to the photos that exist of the Secretary General with David Ng, since indicted, with Frank Lorenzo, and particularly in instances where it appears that groups that receive contributions from the two, and then put them in a room to have photographs with the Secretary General? Is this something that, how does the Secretary General view this in retrospect, and what's going to be done in the future?
First of all, a photo of a Secretary General with any individual should in no way be interpreted as a sponsorship or agreement. It's just a photo.
In an event, and there's one that actually, as it turns out, I witnessed in Cipriani, if the Secretary General enters a large space and is then taken to a smaller space for such photographs, what's the basis for that, as opposed to people with selfies?
I think if you were there, then you condone the event as well.
Cipriani's in December 2013 with John Ash, indicted and since deceased.
The grand jury has returned an indictment against Ng Lap Seng, John Ash, and others, and they've added new charges, including money laundering. I wanted to know, now that it's not just the prosecutor, but a grand jury has itself embraced these charges and added to them, what is the UN, as this process goes forward, does the UN look at these new charges and say, even pending our audit, how do we close these apparent holes that exist in our system? Or what is your process? What's your comment on the indictment?
Our comment on the indictment is that we certainly hope that the legal process that's underway in the United States can get to the bottom of this. We feel that there's a major need to determine what the truth is and what could be a very serious issue.
This is Ng Lap Seng, indicted, and Vivian Wang of South News, who has pleaded guilty at the same event. Here's Vivian Wang with Mrs. Ban, who also attended the founding of the Global Sustainability Foundation.
Sherry Yan, who was also among the indictees yesterday, there was a painting exhibition. I actually remember it well. It was in September 2014 in the Secretariat lobby, where the coffee shop is now. And basically, I mean, it was presented as a, art exhibition. It's still, the video is still on UNTV, but the artist was in fact Sherry Yan's father. So some people are asking, like, is this how the UN works? Like, what is the process, if you could explain it, for just generally speaking, in order to have a, quote, UN art exhibit? And is it appropriate? Can someone just flash cash and get their relative to have a show inside the UN?
No, not in the least. There is a committee that deals with exhibitions, and exhibitions are vetted through that committee.
Is it a DPI committee or a Department of Management? What is that committee?
The Department of Public Information has the key role in that.
I know that you're still relatively new as USG DPI, so I ask it in that spirit. This same event that took place in June 30th in the GA lobby, sponsored by the Global Sustainability Foundation. What did you understand it to be? And also, like the South-South Awards that you attended. I guess, have there been any changes in how DPI will sort of view such events going forward? And what can you say about those two events, sort of what your understanding of them was when you participated? Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. On the last question, I think the spokesman made clear everything that has to be made clear at this point, so I can only align myself on what he said. And it is true, I participated in the South-South Awards ceremony.
This was the second of Gallach's two letters to Intercity Press, photograph taken at the UN Security Council stakeout, from which Intercity Press was forcibly removed by UN security.
There he goes, there he goes. Did you like the information you got from the Saudis?
Who said that you could give the open press briefing room to a closed meeting?
We're lending them the room. It's not a press briefing.
Well, it's in the press briefing room.
Next time, Funka will
It's
fucking Friday night. I'm so fucking tired. I want to go home.
I'll sit there then.
Just leave.
I don't agree that there's a closed meeting in here. I didn't see anything about it. It was much less disruptive here. It's not a question of politeness. It's a question of principle. The principle is this is a UN press briefing room with UN resources being used to do it. I'm a journalist. They're talking about things that affect journalists here. I want to attend it. And you should support me in that. I don't want to. I don't have to join UNCA.
John Polo made it quite clear at the start of the meeting. He said this is for UNCA members only.
Well,
you are welcome to join for drinks at 7 o'clock.
I have no desire to drink with you. I want to cover things that cover UN. That cover the UN.
You know what? I want to go home to my fucking children. It's Friday. I'm just asking you to leave.
They're talking about issues that affect supposedly journalism. You can cancel your phone. Don't touch my phone.
I'm just asking.
So you turned off the phone?
I'm just asking you to leave, Matthew.
What is it a closed meeting? Reasonable, Matthew. Is it a closed meeting? Is it a closed meeting? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, but he lies a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but
So do you.
Yeah, you honestly are.
Someone told you.
Have I been told? Are you?
You would leave.
Okay, this is not UN security. This is.
I'm just asking you to leave. We'll get this sorted out. I'll explain to you on Monday. I'm just asking.
I don't know what could be so secret.
Also, on Friday, you'd said to me that you were going to clarify something, so I just want to ask you about it, about the use of this room. There was an event held Friday at 5, as you know, since you came and asked me to leave it, but it was with UN audio support. And I know that in the past, when for example, the President of France tried to also borrow the room for the traveling press corps, you had said to me it wouldn't happen again. What's the protocols for ejecting the media from the UN press briefing room? And is it appropriate? I guess maybe I misunderstood it, but you seem to be poking at my camera, which was filming. Is a UN spokesperson supposed to be turning off the camera of the media filming something that at least I believe was newsworthy, in that the organization holding the event has received money from Ng Lap Seng, the Macau-based businessman, now under house arrest, in exchange for a photo op with Ban Ki-moon?
I think the thing that was most inappropriate on Friday was your behavior. I think it was completely inappropriate and does not, I think, follow the guidelines of the proper guidelines of behavior. Anyone who's accredited here, who gets to use this room is really my decision, is this office's decision. It was. Matthew, are you going to let me finish?
Please do.
Okay. It was lent. It was lent to UNCA to use as their general for a general meeting they had. and I really have nothing else to
It's a
say.
glassed-in for the record, it's a
Matthew.
glassed-in booth, entirely visible.
Matthew.
Number two, why did you
Matthew.
stay on hold on?
I'm done.
Could you ask any journalist here to walk out right
Matthew,
now? It doesn't seem to. I would.
Okay,
And what about the
I think
poking of the
you're-
camera? I'm
Matthew,
asking you.
I'm done. I'm done answering on this issue, Mr.
Sure, thanks. I wanted to ask you again for a list or disclosure of the use of this room, approved by the Office of the Spokesman. And I'm just saying it because yesterday you said that you're in charge of the room, you have the information. Do you have it now?
We have the information, but we don't have a list. We don't keep a list. We do this case by case.
So can I ask a question?
The bottom line, Matthew, and this is an important thing, we keep all press briefings in this room open to all press.
But obviously,
The meeting that you were trying to crash into on Friday was not a press briefing.
my
It's
question
an
is this: anything
organizational
that
meeting.
you exclude people
Though
from,
those-
you're going to say is not a briefing. I have a simple question. One, I think you just should disclose the list. You should disclose the list since it's public.
There's no such
public
list.
resources are being used. But the actual, since you say you have it,
There's
but
not a list. We have the information.
Okay,
We
here's the
don't have a
question:
list.
has the room been lent by your office to any affiliate or fundee of Ng Lap Seng or the Global Sustainability Foundation, both of which are named in the U.S. Attorney's Office indictment?
No.
You
It
don't.
is
You
not.
know that to be the case?
I know that to be the case. Yes.
No. Okay.
I know that to be the case.
Do you heard the word fundee and you said no, right?
I know that it's not a question. No one puts up money to use
That's not what I
this
asked.
room.
I said, have you lent the room to a fundee
was
of
not-
Ng Lap Seng or the Global Sustainability Foundation? If you need time to answer it, please email it. But this is the question.
Here was Francis Lorenzo in an event in the UN press briefing room, not in the UN media alert. Here again was Francis Lorenzo in the UN press briefing room. Ban Ki-moon's Farhan Haq misspoke, but it wouldn't matter because it would be inner city press that would be removed.
These are.
Yeah.
Masood, sorry.
Stephane, can you please tell us about the blogger Mr. Matthew Lee, who has been very active on the internet, spewing all kinds of reports, whether false or not. As to what is his status now?
We await him to return so he can vacate his office.
This is it. Ban Ki-moon sweepstakes. Take your journalist to the curb day. You win. You win the censorship sweepstakes. As Ban Ki-moon's tenure went on longer, he started appointing people that nobody knew how they got the job. Why did they give him the job? For UN iPhone doesn't mean anything of what actually happens to it. It does show an awareness. It does show an awareness of a desire to create an impression.
Yeah.
This used to say inner city press. Somebody, I don't know at what point, Tal, at what point was this, I didn't notice it until the other day that my sign was torn off. When did that take place? Be aware, Luis is a member of FUNCA. It's going to be hard to take that sign down. You may want to, but they mentioned that Vijay Naviar was there. They didn't mention any of that. Too convenient. The whole thing is John Ash. John Ash is just one guy. John Ash is the equivalent of Babacar Guy. He's just like the wrong person of color at the wrong time, in the wrong place. And the boss, Hervé Latsis, or in this case, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, gets off scot-free. Been in Tubi, there's like water coming into the roof and smells like sewage every time the rain. For $2 billion. It's another Ban Ki-moon special. Or Michael Adlerstein. Oh, we're going to go through the very same gate they threw me out of on February 19th. Where's Debbie? Less talking, more walking. That's what the man said. Let's set up our shop. Okay, that's great. Just drop me off here. This is it. Thank you, Ban Ki-moon. Can you watch this for 1 second? No, I got it. You want to drop the box? Yeah, I guess I'm gonna, whatever arrangements I'm supposed to make, I'm gonna make. Okay, I got this. Good. I think this is pretty unexpected to happen here. Pretty unexpected. All the things that you said you're checking Monday, what did you do? It's not. That's false promise. That's just requests are on the Interstate Press as a media that's covered the for 10 years has the right to remain even if I'm not made in writing in February. All right, set up shop right here. Okay, I think our time is concluded. Yeah. And you can find the evidence in the OIOS audit from paragraph 37 through 40. Second?
For you to have?
Well, I'm taking a picture of my belongings thrown in the street. That is lovely organization. Yeah, yeah. All right. Now I'm going to treat you for the guy. Sorry, man.
I'm sorry about the issues you got. You know what I'm saying? But take me first.
The issue I have is that the top of the organization is corrupt, and they throw out journalists who write about it. That's my issue. I don't have an issue. They have an issue. The issue is called censorship. People are going to stay around here for a while. I mean, I don't know what they expect. I don't know what they think. They think they're just going to throw people in the street and they're just going to walk away. It's fucking unbelievable. Unbelievable. The whole thing was BS. The whole thing was like sugar talk. Like, oh, it's great, it's great. That's like, give us your information or we'll throw your stuff in the street. It's like, okay, wait a second. Ban Ki-moon's UN has dumped ICP's files onto First Ave as it dumped ICP. Now let's find the audio here. Copy location. This, some people often say that something speaks for itself. This truly speaks for itself. That's like on February 19th, they threw Interstate Press out of that gate onto the street, whereas on this side, Voice of America and South Africa Broadcasting stood laughing and filming. Today, after a bunch of sweet talk, after calls from Congress and letters from the Government Accountability Project, this is what it's come to. This is the United Nations and how it treats journalists. 10 years I covered the UN. 10 years writing about corruption in the UN, and this is the result. Sometimes you have to laugh. Sometimes it's so absurd, because anywhere else in New York where a corrupt official tried to do this to the press, they would be taken to court. They would be taken to court, they would resign, they would have to answer questions. The job of the Department of Public Information is not censorship. It's supposed to be making openness, not censorship. But maybe some of them they might have even have liked. These are articles about Burundi, Yemen, Sri Lanka. They didn't like those articles because the UN helped kill people in Sri Lanka, as they did in Yemen. Before I quit UNCA, but soon before it, because I believed it was corrupt, in which the president of UNCA, Gianpaolo Pioli, beyond his famous renting of an apartment to a Sri Lankan war criminal and screening his movie, there was an incident in which Gianpaolo Pioli awarded a Brooks Brothers tie to a spokesman during a briefing. And when called, he said, oh, what does it matter? You know, what does it matter? Like, you know, and soon thereafter, they were tricking out their clubhouse to have an open bar for the spokesman and for DPI staff, who they would later use and work with to evict Inner City Press. And, hey, what does it matter? Macau-based businessman taking over the lobby? What does it matter? Changing a document for a conference center in Macau? What does it matter? 40,000 dead on the beaches of Sri Lanka? What does it matter? 10,000 killed by the UN in Haiti? What does it matter? Throw the boxes in the street.
Vice President. The Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action was adopted under the auspice of the United Nations. It led to the creation of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the focal points of human rights within the UN, and set the United Nations at the center of the global human rights movement. At times of today, many believe that the United Nations itself should set the example for the rest of the world. Too often, however, we have seen that this is not the case. It is with regret and concern that we must request the Council's attention for a matter of interference of the right to freedom of expression of a journalist at the UN in New York by the office of the UN most senior official. After covering the UN for more than a decade, on 19 February 2016, Inner City Press was ordered to leave the UN premises on 2 hours' notice in a letter signed by UN Under Secretary General for Public Information. The official reason given was that the journalist covered a private meeting. This meeting was held in the UN press briefing room, to which all press is ordinarily allowed, and the journalist immediately left the room when asked to do so by UN security. Moreover, the apparent harassment of Inner City Press appears to have commenced after it began covering a story concerning corruption linked to the office of the UN Secretary General. While the story has been widely covered, it was Inner City Press that repeatedly asked pointed questions about it at UN press conferences given by the spokesperson of the Secretary General. The timing of the first expelling of the Inner City Press journalist from the UN, then the closing of his office at the time the story was being covered, after more than a decade of covering the UN, at best seems suspicious and at worst a blatant interference with the human rights to freedom of expression by a body who should know better and set a better example. We call on the High Commission for Human Rights, who is itself an Under-Secretary General, to inquire into this matter and to report the findings to this Council at its next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I can tell you right now, the UN Correspondents Association is not corrupt. Thank you.
Again, Michelle, as with Matthew, please take these disputes outside of this briefing. This is a press briefing. I understand that you're responding to something that happened earlier in this briefing, but please, from here on out, let's just ask questions about the work of the United Nations, all right?
The UN is being destroyed figuratively, literally, now, on the way in, right after I'd suspended the broadcast. Who came through? Not having to go through the metal detectors, as I'm now required to, but who came through? A team of 6 Moroccan diplomats. 6. And I asked them, is the meeting at 8:30? One of them joked, it's at 8. The other one said, let's see. They think something's going on. Nothing's been announced by Mr. Dujarric. I'm here for a Security Council meeting. Many people are here. Here I am with my green pass. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Locked out of the Security Council. Locked out of the Security Council by Cristina Gallach. My pass doesn't work on the turnstile. This meeting is supposed to be open when there's a Security Council meeting. Huh. Well, let's see. The spokesman's office never announced this meeting. Why not? We'll have more on that as well. Let's see. There's definitely people going in. There goes an American legal advisor from the U.S. mission. Here comes the Ukrainian permanent representative. Je peux pas entrer. Voilà. Voilà. Look, there they are, the Spanish ambassador, the French ambassador, talking so nicely, so politely. And the UK ambassador. This is how it rolls with Western Sahara. Permanent representatives arriving for a meeting. If I were to try my pass, of course, they could tell me I shouldn't film security, but what I will tell you is that my pass does not work on this thing. Therefore, as the only journalist here, I can't cover the meeting. Good luck. You quoted in the Korea Herald as saying, and it's a direct quote, "The likelihood of Ban running for president is higher than before his visit. He currently sees his run for election as one of possible options, which is a change from his previous position." Since this question comes up in here a lot and we don't really get any answers, is your second part of that, that how Ban Ki-moon sees the possibility of running, is that based on conversations with him, and in what capacity did you say that? Thanks.
I didn't say that. You know, the reporters put it in my mouth. You know, I only said that because they asked me about what Mr. Ban said during his press meeting in Jeju, and they tried to interpret it as him announcing his intention to run for Korean president. So I said, no, he didn't say that. If you read carefully what he said in Jeju, he said that he will make decision. He will concentrate on his work, the remainder of his work as Secretary General until the end of the year, and then he will make decision on what he is going to do after that, and he will do that very carefully. That's what he said. So there is no mention of running for president. But he, in the past, he didn't make a comment on such question. But now he was saying that he was going to make decision on his future upon the completion of his duty as Secretary General. So that's the only difference. And the media interpreted as, well, then there is a higher possibility of him running for president because he didn't mention it in the past. Now he's saying that he will make decision. So that's how they interpret. I didn't say that.
You did put it in quotes. I wanted to ask you one follow-up, which is...
Hold on.
Well, you allowed Mr. Abadi to have like 3 follow-ups. So.
I have a follow-up and then Joe.
Okay. And this has to do with sort of the fair treatment or high or low profile of ECOSOC. What I wanted to ask you is, for example, when the Security Council meets, all journalists can stand in front of it, all journalists can stake it out, all journalists can speak to diplomats going in and out. In the case of that ECOSOC high-level political forum, it was impossible. The majority of journalists accredited by the UN were unable to stand in front of the meeting and speak to people. You, to your credit, when you came through the turnstile, did speak. But do you think that this is an appropriate treatment of ECOSOC as opposed to other organs of the UN, if in fact you want coverage?
Well, ECOSOC usually don't have any stakeouts, but I didn't know about any arrangement for.
No, I mean the policy was the same, that reporters are able to access from the third floor.
But stakeouts, like the Security Council today, everyone's standing in front of it.
It's the standard policy where reporters can enter from the third floor. Yes, Joe.
Yesterday I'd asked about Ng Seung-soo and whether he's the special advisor.
Yes, he remains special advisor. I've put in a request to the ethics office to see whether he's made any notifications of different business dealings. I believe he may have done some, but I'm trying to get it from the ethics office. Alas, at this time of summer, there's some offices that will be harder to get replies back from. So I'll let you know once I have it.
Sure. I guess I want to understand. There's a rule that seems to say that a person needs approval from the Secretary General for outside. Does that apply here, or is it just a matter of saying that you're doing it?
Well, first I need to check again whether the ethics office has had any notifications of any other activities.